Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Zale Dowlen, who's a kingdom-driven attorney, estate planner, insurance professional, and a public speaker. Zale, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mike. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because I love when I see different layers and nuances of how people serve their clients, and from an attorney perspective, and talking about legacy planning with estate planning and all of those aspects in between. I want to dive into that and see how you serve your clients, but give us a little bit of your background first. What has your entrepreneurial journey been like in your career?
Sure. So I spent part of my career as actually an insurance adjuster, working for several different insurance companies. From that, I figured out that I could probably survive law school, and I went to law school and came out of law school and really wound up not doing what I had anticipated. I had anticipated being more of a personal injury attorney because that interlaced with what I was doing before. But I was really taking on a bit of a different journey. And so I litigated for 14 years, and I still have some litigation cases. But with COVID, it forced me to look at my business model. I dusted off my MBA and took a look at what I enjoyed doing, and that was estate planning and helping people make those plans. And so that's where I am.
Yeah, so that's like a dual focus, so like a dual licensed professional. So talk a little bit about that, because I would suspect that if you are an attorney, people appreciate that. If you're a financial professional talking about estate planning, they appreciate that. But what does being dually licensed bring to your clients? Sure.
So as I dusted off my MBA, and when we were hit by COVID, some things changed with litigation, and I got to looking at what else I could do. And there's another gentleman in my office who is an insurance professional, and I kept looking at the opportunities that I had when I did my estate planning. And with my estate planning, I don't particularly target high net worth folks like much of the estate planning industry does. I really want to bring that service to everybody. And so I noticed that really the folks who were somewhat in the middle were a bit underserved. And by adding my life, health, and annuity license, that just gave me a different avenue. As I did that, there were some things that I noticed that it didn't seem like much of the rest of the insurance world was noticing. And it's just really the features and how the law interlaced with the policies and all of that. And so it's put me in a very unique position where when I'm having discussion with people about their estate planning, we can also talk about retirement planning. We talk about life insurance, annuities, that sort of thing. And I've had a lot of people in here just asking questions about policies they already had. And, fortunately, I was able to reassure them on decisions they had made in the past, explain to them how they worked because maybe the agent wasn't around, or maybe they just didn't have contact with them. And so it just gave me an extra element, a deeper element. When it comes to dual licensing, there's some things that you have to pay attention to as far as, people just need to clearly understand when I'm on the law side of the house or when I'm on the insurance side of the house. But it's certainly added an extra facet to the practice that I didn't anticipate. But it's actually kind of been fun to work that out.
Yeah, I would think that it would bring validity and credibility to the estate planning side of things to be an attorney. I also, in the back of my mind, I keep hearing, well, this isn't legal advice. A lot of people have to say that when you're talking. So I would suspect that, like you just said, that becomes a challenge when you're like zoned in on the legacy planning, estate planning side of things, and you're making comments just because you are looking at their situation. You'll need to delineate that, okay, is this legal advice that I can say at the moment, or is this something we need to make sure, I would think that there's a good fine line that you need to make sure that everyone's understanding which side of the house that you're speaking from. Is that a kind of a challenge in how you're working with your clients?
It is. It's more from the legal side than, say, the insurance side. So yeah. I tell people all the time, it's really as simple as somebody doesn't need to walk into the office asking for a will, walk out with a whole life policy and not know the difference. So, you know what, in looking at that and looking at the different rules that apply, I just developed a disclaimer form, and I tell everybody that, you know, when we start to say, specifically if we move from law to life insurance or annuities, that they just sign the form, that they understand that that's a different license, but it's the same person and honestly the same perspective.
Yes. So talk a little bit about when you have someone come to you for estate planning purposes. And I love that you say, you know, it doesn't need to be high net worth, because most of the time you hear family office or estate planning or legacy planning, and you think, well, you must need to have mega dollars to work with. You want to bring that knowledge down to the common person. So what's the typical type of client that you're working with, and what is it that you're guiding them to consider with estate planning? Because I think that estate planning goes well beyond just making sure you have your will in place.
Right. So I basically have three different camps. I have the young parents, which are honestly about a third of what I do. I have the folks who are empty nesters who are headed toward retirement, and I have the folks that have just honestly waited to the absolute last minute, and fortunately they still have some capacity to be able to enter into the documents. But what I've been able to do, really from my professional perspective, is that whenever I was doing more litigation, it was really hard for me to serve folks who came in who honestly didn't have a lot of money. With this, what I have been able to do is for folks who come in that, you know, they just absolutely can't pay the fees, is I have developed a workbook that they can work through. And so even folks with limited means can have a plan. And so that's been a great thing for me, because I mean, I really have a heart for service, and so it's hard to turn people away. And whenever I can hand them a workbook that they can work their way through and have a sufficient plan, that's just been great. Whenever I've got folks who come in who maybe they have some limited means, but they still want a plan, with the way that I've been able to set the office up, I can serve a lot of those camps. And then that's where, as we're having those discussions, the insurance, annuities, that sort of thing come in. They're not right for everybody, but sometimes that's a good fit.
Yes. You know, you said plan and workbook, and that gives me the feeling of, okay, if I can just understand something and work through a process, a blueprint, and at the end you have this plan, boy, I would venture to say that many of your clients are telling you, boy, a weight is lifted off. I had nothing but confusion in front of me because I put things off or I just didn't know. And now you've given me a plan. And now I know where I want to be in retirement 5-10 years from now. And that means I need to be here in 2 or 3 years and here in 2 or 3 months. So is that something that you've noticed that they are picking up on, is just having that clarity?
Absolutely. The majority of what I do leads to peace of mind. And, you know, my elevator pitch is to, you know, for people to live well and to be remembered. And, you know, the just folks I had in here earlier today, you know, I was able to, you know, give them kudos on successfully adulting for the day, because that's really what they do. Is they're putting those affairs in order. And it's not just about whenever somebody becomes room temperature. A lot of this is actually about putting that advanced care plan together, or that durable power of attorney for minor children together. And that way, you know, if they're laid up in a hospital bed and can't make decisions, you know, they've successfully empowered people to make decisions for them.
That's a really good point. And I can tell from what a couple of things you've said that you take the approach of being an educator and an advocate. You know, you think about, you know, obviously you have to pay your bills and you have to sell something, whether it's this, that, or the other. But when people feel pushed, they don't want to do anything. When people are taught and guided and educated, now they're understanding the full picture and they feel comfortable and confident to make those decisions. So talk a little bit about your approach when you're working with your clients and presenting here's the options. Here's the pros and cons. This could benefit you. This one right here might maybe not as much. So I think that's the approach that you're talking about, that you serve your clients with.
Yeah, and you make a good point. And I think it was in one of your earlier shows, you ask a person how they saw themselves, and thought my way through that. And one of the things that I came up with, that I have not a whole lot, but I think this is a good platform to do it, is that I see myself as a tailor. So what does a tailor do? A tailor makes seams. So SEAM. So I see people who are interested in what I offer, more so than people who need it. Everybody needs it, but people who are interested and are willing to make those choices. Then educate them on where they could be and the trappings of if they don't go there. Then advocate for them to make those choices and motivate them to get across the finish line. And that really comes into play in any of what we're talking about, because a lot of times people don't want to think about being laid up in the hospital. They don't want to think about death. Honestly, they don't even think about aging a lot of times. And so, it's that motivation to really get them across the finish line. Sometimes the motivation is to pay for it to get done. But typically when people pay for it to get done, then they're motivated because they put the money out there. So now let's get done. And ironically, it actually helps them to get across the finish line.
Yeah, I've heard it said that when people pay, they pay attention. So when people are meeting with you, they're paying a fee, whatever the fee is, to do the package that you're working with them on, and they're with you in person, live in your office, on Zoom, on the phone, whatever the case may be, and they're like getting into action. So I think that's a big piece of it. It's like, okay, the best way to achieve your goals is, number one, to have a plan of action, and then take that step, take that first step, that initiative, and get that momentum going. So when people are coming to you talking about estate planning, where's the first place that you're typically looking for as like some of the low-hanging fruit for them to take advantage of in their first step?
So typically, it's a little bit different for different people. And so I am flexible to the point that I will give them what they need. So some people, they need a first meeting. Whether it's just fleshing out the details, or sometimes if they don't have a first, whether it's in person, whether it's Zoom, whatever it is, they have this perceived need of feeling important in that process. And so I honor that. For other people, it's a matter of how quickly and easily can we get this done? And that's emailing them a questionnaire and moving forward. So I have had to learn to meet people where they are. I've got some folks right now that are kind of dragging their feet, and they've got a lot going on. And I've offered them, just a set Zoom meeting so we can put it on the calendar, and they can, again, do their best to adult their way through this. So it's just really different for different people. And that's really kind of fascinated me. So
I think it's interesting. Like literally 2 or 3 hours ago, I had a client that we're doing a series of interviews, and he has to pick the third topic for his interview. And I'd send him a couple emails like, hey, here's the link to book your next interview. And he hadn't responded in like 2 emails. And so I just picked up the phone, called him, and he's like, hey, Mike, how's it going? I was like, hey, he goes, I know, I need to do that, but I just can't think about what it should be. I'm like, let's just knock it out. So I started just talking through, hey, what is the, just asking great questions. And all of a sudden it's like the light bulb goes off. We nailed it. And he's like, okay, there it is. So that's exactly what you are talking about. Meet them where they are. You need to find out what your client needs, where maybe their sticking point, maybe sometimes just that little bit of a nudge enables them to take that next step. And then they become self-motivated because it's like, okay, yeah, I saw the big plan. Zale helped me get through that first step, and now I can move on and really put that into action. I think that's a really huge observation.
Right. And one of honestly one of the greatest motivational speakers I've heard recently has had the statement, "Done beats perfect." And I have to remind them from time to time that done beats perfect. We can come back and if we need to tweak something down the line, that's great. But sometimes we just need to get it in the can.
100%. I've heard it said too from, have you ever heard of Les Brown, the motivational speaker?
Yes.
I'm sure that I heard this from him, but I'm sure he heard it from someone else who heard it from someone else, or there's variations of this, but it really makes a lot of sense. Jump and grow your wings on the way down. Just
right.
Get into action, get some stuff happening, because when you get that thing done, yeah, it's better than perfect, but you know what? It's like that in the book, The Lean Startup, MVP, minimum viable product. Just get something out there and get it into action, and then you can tweak and fine tune, and you might find that you get paralysis by analysis because you're just never going to do anything at all. So taking that first step, having the clarity is huge, to have that workbook and that blueprint in front of you. So I think that's a really huge piece. That's a wonderful service that you provide your clients that you would never list on your website. You would never say, one of my services is helping people become so clear and helping them, meeting them where they are, but it becomes a really great service to your clients. I think that's wonderful.
Right.
So you also are a speaker. What type of topics and groups are you speaking at?
So I developed a seminar simply with regard to estate planning and that sort of thing. And that one has been specifically, it was specifically designed for churches as far as that venue goes. And I've had a few of those. That's been good. I've also been getting into more Social Security planning. There's just not a lot of resources out there with regard to Social Security, and also not a lot of resources out there as far as Medicaid, at least that seem to have any nice, decent answers. And so that's been the majority of it. I have an interest in growing that and just talking about professional development. I have a bit of an inner healing journey as well. And so, those are things that interest me. I just haven't been able to carve that out yet.
Well, I would say that where it gets carved out is to fine tune and hone that message and that presentation and that, speech, if you want to call it that, and then just get it out there. And the more people that know about that topic for that target audience, someone out there is going to go, oh, hey, can you? And it's just really kind of like the law of motion, just kind of getting things out there, and that snowball starts to kind of gain momentum. So I think that is spectacular. Well, Zale, I think it's been really neat to see how you intertwine all of your professional, certifications and practice areas. So it's really wonderful that you're working with your clients to help them with that legacy planning, estate planning. If someone is interested in reaching out and learning more and then also connecting with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Mike, whenever my parents decided that my name would be Zale, Z-A-L-E, they certainly didn't have search engine optimization in mind. But,
yep.
When people are looking for me, when they type my name in, I'm pretty easy to find. So ZaleDowlen.com is just the best way to connect with me. I'm licensed as an attorney in Tennessee. I'm not practicing in any other states. I'm licensed as far as insurance goes in a few other neighboring states, but that's simply the easiest way to find me is ZaleDowlen.com.
Excellent. And I'll make sure to have your website hot link for the show notes as well. And thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking with you today.
Mike, I appreciate what you're doing for the entrepreneurial community, and I appreciate being here.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.